The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 34. Titan. Based on my existing knowledge of Titan and its mad ruler, I believed it would be prudent to gather as much information as I could before entering the domain itself in order to minimize my time spent in its borders. What's more, Thanos' infamous power and ambition made me wonder whether he was one of those whom my patron described as enemies that would find no small amount of pleasure from ensuring I never have what I seek in my grasp. Out of an abundance of caution, I left my journal behind when I entered Titan, knowing that he could penetrate its illusory script as easily as Hades had. This impulse proved sound. Thanos was more dangerous than I could possibly have imagined. In retrospect, however, leaving the journal behind caused far more trouble than taking it would have. I had no way of knowing this at the time. All I knew when I finally attached myself to a trade caravan delivering weapons to its fortress was that I had not entered such an openly hostile and dangerous domain since the grid, and that I needed to keep my wits about me if I wished to come out again. The Lord. The mad titan Thanos, a bizarre blend of wizard and warlord, hails from a distant land that I fervently hope never to visit. Wizards of Athos gain magical power by draining the life force from their surroundings through a process called defiler magic. Centuries of this exploitation have led to a barren and desolate world. Thanos' fanatical disciples claim that he once practiced a form of magic like our own. I saw no evidence of this in his domain, which makes the Pride Lands look like a verdant paradise. Whatever he may have done in the past, Thanos has fully embraced defiler magic today. Of course, as a pillar of philosophical consistency, Thanos is using defiler magic to end defiler magic and ravaging his domain to prevent others from being ravaged. Supposedly, he has discovered some ritual that allows him to rip the life force from intelligent beings and return it to the natural world, restoring some of the vital energies that his fellow defilers have drained. To this end, he sends armies through the mists to subdue villages and perform this ritual, killing half of the population in the name of restoring their life force to the land like some kind of lunatic druid. Of course, Thanos is no longer in Athos, and these measures to heal the depredations of defiler magic are unnecessary. His zealots argue that all magic will eventually go the way of Athos, pointing to Hazine as their example, and claiming that these purges help undo the damage that wizards have wrought. This also gives Thanos the excuse to ban all magic in Titan except his own, and that which he grants to the followers he calls his children. I additionally uncovered rumors that Thanos is searching for a group of potent magic items that he believes will grant him the power to perform this ritual across our entire world, killing half the population of every domain. He believes that if he channels enough life energy back into the land, the mists themselves will fade away, and our world will become the kind of fairy tale idol that some outlanders describe in their fanciful tales of home. He has already gained one of the items, a blue stone called the Eye of Odin that amplifies the powers of its wielder. Given the tales about the side effects of attuning to the eye, I have little reason to believe that Thanos' brutality will abate anytime soon. The land. Titan is an arid wasteland of dunes and salt flats, rendered almost completely uninhabitable by defiler magic. The desert beyond Sanctuary, Thanos' unsubtly and inaccurately named city-state, is a punishing expanse of furnace-like heat and little water, home to massive carnivorous insects and venomous reptiles. Sanctuary's climate is just as oppressive, but its inhabitants are less endearing. The majority of Sanctuary's residents are a hive mind of insectoid creatures called the Chitauri, who perform the menial tasks that keep Sanctuary functioning and serve as shock troops in Thanos' genocidal assaults. The others, and the reason I was so wary of entering Titan without a caravan as my escort and alibi, are the individuals that Thanos euphemistically calls his children. During these attacks on other domains, the children of Thanos watch for any young people who have potential as warriors or warlocks. Rather than culling them along with half the village, or leaving them alive and bereaved with the other half, they take these youths back to Titan, where Thanos raises them as his own. with all the fatherly affection of an animal that eats its young. Only the strongest, most ruthless, and most zealous of these individuals can become true children of Thanos, with others joining the Chitauri in more commonplace tasks, if they survive. Thanos regularly pits potential children against one another in gladiatorial combat, and the consequences for the loser are severe, as they are taken to his magical laboratories for augmentation to ensure that they perform better in the next match. Adventurers, and presumably itinerant scholars, are irresistible fodder for Thanos' armies. Those who cannot be persuaded to join his cause can train his children by facing them in the fighting pits, or can provide an expendable test subject for a magical procedure too experimental to risk on one of his chosen few. The lucky ones are roped into making a bargain with Thanos to further his goals across the domains, if anyone who has a conversation with Thanos can be deemed lucky. Merchants in a trade caravan delivering weapons did not need to fear any such rough treatment, which got me into Sanctuary without incident. Unfortunately, while they negotiated with a blue-skinned woman who seemed to be half tiefling and half warforged, I decided to slip away with invisibility in the hopes of gaining more information. So much of what I had heard about Thanos was rumor and speculation, and I doubted that any of the permitted areas would reveal anything of use. I had the chance to observe one of those gladiatorial battles and its consequences firsthand, as well as overhearing revealing snippets of conversation about the search for other Infinity Stones? At some point, however, I turned to see one of Thanos' children, a tall, pallid creature without a nose, staring directly at me. He must have been using Eldritch Sight, because he could see me. Before I could react, his eyes went inky black. Sleep crashed down on me with an almost physical weight, and I knew no more. Dread possibilities. I awoke manacled in a cell before Thanos' toady, whose name turned out to be Ebony Maw, and who somehow managed an appallingly nasal voice despite his lack of a nose. When he questioned me, I provided my usual cover story. I explained that I had been hired by a wealthy and eccentric patron named Yensid, likely a historian or cartographer, to survey the domains on his behalf, using my modest magical abilities to aid in my investigation. I held to this story even as the questioning became more rigorous. Eventually, the Maw did something thoroughly unpleasant that forced me to assume my form of dread. The shadowy manifestation of my patron was all he needed to see in order to drag me to Thanos' throne room with a more accurate summation of my purpose. I had seen Thanos from a distance, watching two of his prospective children throwing themselves at each other, but that hardly prepared me for his overwhelming presence. Even without the throne, he towered at least 3 feet above me. The Eye of Odin was the size of my palm. He wore it mounted on a ring. Thanos dismissed his minion, then turned to me.
You could have saved yourself a lot of pain if you told the truth right away.
I spat out a mouthful of blood. I would hate to deny myself the opportunity to experience Titan's fabled hospitality firsthand. He cocked his head.
Humor. Most people have the humor cut out of them after a session with the Maw. Strength and loyalty.
Is this how you typically operate? He tortures your prisoners, you come in with soft-spoken compliments, and you end up looking benevolent by comparison?
Believe me, I've never been concerned with how others see me.
I do believe that. I shrugged. If you're planning to ask me to divulge any of my patron's secrets, then you should prepare yourself for disappointment. He tells me nothing. He gave me an itinerary of domains to visit and instructed me to report on my findings. Nothing more specific than that. It's been quite the point of contention between us, truth be told. For all I know, the story I told your lackey is true, and he simply brought me on to improve the accuracy of his map collection. For the first time, I confessed to feeling a flush of pride in my patron. Please, Yensid, do not allow it to go to your head.
Your patron is a withered memory that doesn't have the dignity to die. While I'm away is eternity with plots and machinations. He doesn't deserve your loyalty. As for his secrets, I'm not asking.
Thanos tightened the hand that bore the Eye of Odin into a fist. and I felt an alien presence pressing against my mind. When Maleficent had pulled my patron's face from my thoughts, her touch had been as delicate as a spider's. Thanos was more akin to a battering ram. I tried to push back against him, and I felt the familiar and almost comforting sensation of my ring of protection going cold against my finger. Thanos' knuckles went white as his fist tightened further, and the Eye of Odin flared with light. My ring no longer felt cold. It was hot now, as hot as the air of Titan. My mental defenses cracked, then shattered, and he was inside my head. Everything I had ever seen or done, everything I had ever thought, was laid bare. Memories flashing before my eyes as he sifted through them, and I was helpless to do anything but watch. And it hurt. I have no idea of how long I endured his psychic vivisection before I blacked out. Eventually, my senses began to return, and the first thing I became aware of was something cold on my forehead. A damp cloth. Between the fog of recent unconsciousness and the disorientation of viewing so many of my memories as vividly as though they had been yesterday, my first thought was that I was a child again, that I had a fever, and that my mother was caring for me. But when I opened my eyes, it was not my mother bending over me. It was Thanos. With an inarticulate cry of rage, I slapped the cloth away and scrambled to a sitting position. My head swam, and I did not dare to risk standing.
There's no need for that. You're going to have a headache for a couple of hours. I can send someone with medicine if you like.
He was right about the headache. I was having trouble forming a coherent response. The one I managed was ineloquent, but colorful. He chuckled. Fondly, damn him.
You should meet my daughters. Think you'd get along.
After meeting your son, I'll forgo the pleasure. I rubbed my wrists. At least he had undone the manacles while I was unconscious. Thanos rose, towering over me once again.
Before, I didn't know if you were a dupe or one of his ruthless, ambitious strivers. Either one could be useful to me, but you're neither. You understand what he is, even if you haven't admitted it to yourself. He really isn't worth the pain.
And I suppose you are. That's where this is headed, isn't it? To my surprise, he shook his head.
Not me. My work. My solution.
I've heard a few things about your work. Mass murder? Oh, but it's the good kind.
I call it mercy. If I get what I'm looking for, their deaths will be instant, painless. Is that really worse than being torn apart by werewolves, drained by a vampire, serving your master as a zombie or worse? If I can find what I'm looking for, all of the horrors of the mist will be gone. It'll be blue skies and full bellies. What would you sacrifice for that?
As reprehensible as Thanos may be, I will say this for him. His conviction and force of personality are unmatched. Hours later, I wondered why I had not thought to ask whether he could use the virtual omnipotence he sought to wish away those werewolves, vampires, and zombies rather than half the people they preyed upon. At the time, however, hearing him speak of his vision with such certainty, it seemed as if there were only two options. The world as it was now, and the world that he imagined. Of course I wanted the horrors of the mists to be gone. I could clearly picture my family laughing together in the sunlight, safe and happy in a world without monsters, but when I imagined it, it was my entire family, and Thanos would kill half of them and call it a kindness. I wouldn't sacrifice people. That's what you're supposedly doing this for, isn't it? The people? The same people that you're killing? Half the people you love, half the people they love, gone. Nothing is worth that.
A peaceful, safe, contented world. That's worth anything. That's worth everything.
I won't be contented in any world without my brother in it. And I won't risk his life on a roll of the dice.
A pity. If only I'd found you younger, before this world could corrupt you with sentiment. If only my forces had come for your village, I could have raised you to see things clearly, and think of the horrors I could have spared you from.
My fury nearly choked me. It took all my willpower not to release an eldritch blast into that supercilious face. I doubted his attitude of fatherly indulgence would have survived that. You saw what the hags wanted to do to me, I said when I was able to speak. I made a gesture to encompass all of Titan. It was better than this. He regarded me for a moment.
Is it better than what Aslan's going to do to you?
Opening the door to the throne room, he said,
You are free to go and tell your master. Up until now, Aslan, your scheming has been beneath my notice. See to it you keep it that way.
Parting thoughts. The blue-skinned tiefling woman escorted me to the border. It galls me to admit it, but we did, in fact, get along. You know that I have had my reservations since acknowledging your true identity, Yensid. But I know this. I have been to Darkon many times, and I will go there many more. I can say, unequivocally, that even before I drew Thanos' attention, I would rather spend a month in Darkon than a minute in Titan. I have no idea what you were looking for or what your plan for it is, but this experience has been clarifying. Even without knowing your goals, I would rather see you accomplish them than Thanos or any number of other rulers I have seen in my travels. To be clear, I do not trust you, and I see no reason to pretend otherwise. You would know it for a lie. Nonetheless, I do not have the luxury of a world of black and white. After reclaiming my journal, I took a shard of stone and prepared to re-enter the mists. I had heard that my next destination was the domain from which Thanos had stolen the Eye of Odin. I have no particular desire to visit anywhere that the Mad Titan has touched, but my patron does compensate me well for it. Pay a man enough, and he'll walk barefoot into hell. Regards, D.
The bloated fly, squirming in the web, has a message for the spider. Amusing. As entertaining as Thanos' self-aggrandizing message was, I doubt its delivery was the sole purpose behind your release. For one, he would not want to deal with my inevitable retaliation. And for another, I suspect he hopes you'll reconsider joining his cause. Do not fret, little scholar. I shall ensure the hospitality you endured is repaid in kind. And should his presence prove irksome for our plans, all I need do is dangle a shiny trinket in front of his narrow vision, and he will be convinced it's another of his precious infinity stones, unable and unwilling to see it for what it truly is, a distraction. Though I may not have your trust, little scholar, as you are often fond of reminding me, I find your loyalty and courage not deny my enjoyment of a meticulously charted map. But we both know this is not the intention of your excursions. Perhaps someday you will learn the truth and will come to find that my motivation is not as abhorrent as others have implied. They loathe my person and my methods, but they do not understand me, and they never shall. As my little scholar touched upon defiler magic, I need not inform her of its opposite, preservation. As the names imply, defilers destroy the land to empower their casting, and preservers only take what is needed. Preservers must have a patient and delicate hand to master their art. The defilers, on the other hand, well, clearly even overinflated, narrow-minded warlord can master it. The distinction between preservers and defilers reveals much about Thanos himself. Any strong-headed buffoon can destroy, but to create something new while preserving what exists, that is no simple feat. Hence the Titan's obsession with culling half of all life in the name of mercy. It is a lazy, simplistic, and brutish solution to a series of complex and interconnected issues. To truly solve a problem, one must understand its cause, and Thanos could not be bothered with the latter. He would rather remove a finger than dig out the thorn that ails it.
This has been The Wonderful World of Dark Lords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at darklordaslan. The Wonderful World of Dark Lords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening. Dear Binks, I need to tell you what happened when I reached the border of Titan. Nebula was not a great talker, but our silence was surprisingly companionable. The air of tightly contained anger about her did not seem directed at me, and something about her made me feel as though I were looking into some warped carnival mirror at the person I might have been if I had not been permitted to express my own emotions. Perhaps the person I might have been had Thanos come to Salem. My attempts to draw her into conversation were largely unsuccessful. It may have been wishful thinking, but I got the sense that she appreciated me speaking to her as though she were a person. When we reached the border, a dim haze of sand whipped by the wind that I knew would serve the same function as the mists. She stopped. In a low voice, she said, "I know very little about this Aslan you serve. All I know is that from the way he received you, my father considers him a threat. That is all I need to know. Should he ever wish to move against my father, find me." She turned to go, but I grabbed her arm. "Wait. If it comes between Thanos and my patron, I'd choose my patron. But I thought of the tales I had heard about Aslan Rex. If even a 10th part of them were true, I had told my patron that I no longer had the luxury of black and white thinking, and I meant it. As long as there are beings like Thanos or Wanda Maximoff against whom to compare him, I cannot think him any darker than gray. But I would be a fool to think him any lighter. But I don't know if I want to choose either of them," I finished. if something with him goes wrong, can we meet without Thanos knowing? And if you ever have a chance to escape, will you find me? Can we help each other? Nebula held my gaze for a long moment. It was impossible to tell what was happening behind those dark eyes or in that stony face. Finally, her jaw twitched. We can try. There's one other thing. When Thanos was in my mind, he would have seen something. A doll made of white horsehair. I don't know whether it would hold any interest for him or not. It's not a stone. But if he ever sends you to Crescent City, for the sake of the child you could have been, please do not allow him to get his hands on it. She went very, very still, every muscle in her body going as taut as a drawn bowstring, and I feared that I had overstepped. But at last, she gave me a jerky nod and turned to go back to Sanctuary. I have met all sorts of people over the past 3 years, Binks, from self-proclaimed gods and fey royalty to talking dogs and living toys. But today, I think I did something that I have not done for some time. I think I made a friend. Love, D.
Is this dumbass on his every powerful magic item is an Infinity Stone kick again? I don't even think Infinity Stones are a thing. The Eye of Odin is way more than an evocation machine, you unimaginative eggplant. And if I was just looking for something to expand my spell list, I'd have called in somebody with the spell I need by now. By the way, I may be a withered memory, but I was whiling away my eternity with your mom last night.